At the picnic, my sister insulted my child, saying, "She'll never achieve anything, at least she can babysit my kids for $50. My parents laughed, but my grandfather didn't. He got angry and said this. My name is Jolene, and 2 weeks ago my 68-year-old grandfather made my entire family cry at a picnic. Not with a sad story. Not with bad news. He made them cry because he finally told the truth, and the truth hit them like a freight train. But before I get to that moment, the moment that changed everything, I need to take you back so you understand why a man who has never raised his voice in 40 years suddenly stood up in the middle of a Memorial Day barbecue and said something so brutal that my sister dropped her plate and my mother couldn't look him in the eye for 3 days. I'm 31. I live in Dayton, Ohio, and I have a 5-year-old daughter named Bria. She's the light of my life. She's silly, she's curious, she talks to bugs like they're her friends, and she draws pictures of our apartment and labels every room with these little crooked letters. She's 5. He's perfect. And 2 weeks ago my older sister Meredith looked at her, looked at my baby, and said something so cruel that I still feel it in my chest when I think about it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it really begins. Growing up, I was the second daughter. My sister Meredith is 3 years older than me, and from the time I can remember she was the golden child. I don't say that with bitterness. Okay, maybe a little bitterness, but mostly I say it because it's just a fact. Meredith was the one my parents, Frank and Diane, put through private school. Meredith was the one who got the car at 16. Meredith was the one whose college fund actually existed. Me. I got hand-me-downs, public school, and a bus pass. And honestly, for a long time I thought that was normal. I thought maybe I just wasn't the kind of kid who deserved more. How messed up is that? Meredith married a guy named Todd when she was 25. Todd works in pharmaceutical sales, drives a BMW, and talks about his bonus like it's a personality trait. They have 2 kids, Aiden, who's 7, and Chloe, who's 4. Meredith doesn't work, which, listen, there's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mom. That's hard work. But Meredith doesn't really do that either. She has a nanny 3 days a week. He goes to Pilates. She posts Instagram stories about mom life, while someone else is packing her kids' lunches. And somehow, to my parents, she's still the daughter who made it. Now me. I got pregnant with Bria when I was 25, and the father, a man named Corey, left before she was even born. Just packed up and moved to Phoenix. Didn't even send a text. So I raised Bria alone. I worked 2 jobs, cashier at a grocery store during the day and cleaned offices at night. I barely slept. I cried in the shower more times than I can count. And not once, not a single time, did my parents offer to help. Not with money. Not with babysitting. Not even with a kind word. My mom actually told me once, "Well, you made your bed, Jolene." Like my daughter was a mistake. Like Bria was a punishment. You know who did help? My grandfather. His name is Earl. Earl Henderson. 78 years old, retired electrician, lives in a little house in Kettering with a garden he talks to and a dog named General. Grandpa Earl is the kind of man who shows up. When Bria was born, he drove 40 minutes to the hospital with a stuffed elephant and a card that said, "Welcome to the world, little boss." When I couldn't make rent one month, he quietly slipped $300 into my purse and told me it was gas money. When Bria had her first day of preschool, guess who was there with a camera? Not my parents. Not Meredith. Grandpa Earl. He's the only reason I didn't completely fall apart. So now fast forward to 2 weeks ago. Memorial Day weekend. My parents decided to have a big family picnic at Eastwood Metro Park. They do this every year. Burgers, potato salad, the whole thing. And every year I go because Grandpa Earl goes and I want Bria to be around him. That's the only reason. Because honestly, every time I'm around my family, something happens that makes me wish I'd stayed home. This year Meredith showed up 40 minutes late, which is very on brand for her. She pulled up in Todd's BMW, wearing a sundress that probably cost more than my electric bill, and immediately started complaining that the picnic tables were sticky. My mom jumped up to wipe them down for her. Of course she did. I was sitting with Bria, who was coloring in a little activity book I'd brought. She was drawing a picture of a house. Our house, she said, with a big yellow sun and a garden. She was so focused, so proud. And I was watching her and thinking, this kid is going to be something. He's going to be someone. I just have to keep going. And that's when Meredith walked over. She looked at Bria's drawing, then looked at me and said, and I swear I will never forget these words, "That's cute, I guess. But let's be real, Jolene. She's probably not going to achieve much. At least she can babysit my kids someday." I'd even pay her $50. I just stared at her. I couldn't even respond. My brain just froze. He said that. About my child. About a 5-year-old little girl who was sitting right there, coloring a picture of her home. And you know what my parents did? My mother laughed. Not a nervous laugh. An actual laugh, like Meredith had told a good joke. And my dad Frank, he chuckled and shook his head like, "Oh Meredith, you're so funny." I felt my face go hot. I felt that sting behind my eyes. And I looked down at Bria, and thank God she was too focused on her drawing to fully understand what had just been said. But she would understand someday. And that thought made me sick. I opened my mouth to say something. I don't even know what I was going to say, but before I could, a chair scraped back hard, and everyone went quiet. Grandpa Earl stood up. "Now you have to understand something about my grandfather. He's not a loud man. He's not dramatic. He's the kind of person who sits in the corner, eats his food and watches. He observes. He remembers everything and he says very little. So when Grandpa Earl stands up at a picnic and the look on his face is like nothing you've ever seen, when his jaw is tight and his eyes are hard and his hands are shaking, not from age but from anger, everyone notices. Everyone stops. He looked at Meredith. Then he looked at my mom. Then at my dad. And he said, "I've been sitting here for years watching you people treat Jolene like she's nothing. Like she's invisible. Like she's less than." And I kept my mouth shut because I thought maybe they'll come around. Maybe they'll see what I see. But you just insulted a child. A 5-year-old little girl. Your own flesh and blood. And you laughed. My mother tried to say something. "Dad, it was just a joke." "Don't," he said. And the way he said it, low, firm, final, my mother closed her mouth immediately. He turned back to Meredith and said, "You think you're better than Jolene because your husband makes money? You think you're better because you got everything handed to you while she had to fight for scraps? Let me tell you something, Meredith. Everything you have, that house, those cars, that life, Todd didn't give you that. I did. I gave your parents the down payment for the house you grew up in. I paid for your college. I co-signed your first apartment. And I have stood here and watched them pour every drop of what I gave into you, while Jolene got nothing." Meredith's face went white. Todd looked like he wanted to disappear. And then Grandpa Earl said the thing that shattered everything. He looked at my dad and said, "Frank, I'm done. I'm cutting you off. All of you. The trust, the property, the accounts. I'm redoing everything. Every single penny I have is going to Jolene and Bria. Because they're the only ones in this family who deserve it." My dad's mouth fell open. My mom grabbed the edge of the table like she might faint. And Meredith started crying. Not because she was sorry. Because she was scared. And Grandpa Earl just picked up his plate, walked over to me and Bria, sat down next to us and said, "Hey little boss. That's a beautiful drawing." You guys, I sat there and I sobbed. Right there at that picnic table with potato salad going cold and my family staring at us like the world had just ended. And honestly, for them maybe it had. But for me, something was just beginning. Because what happened after that picnic, what my grandfather did next and what my family tried to do to stop it, that's where this story really gets intense. And let me tell you, Meredith did not go down quietly. Not even close. So after the picnic I drove home in silence. Bria fell asleep in her car seat clutching that activity book and I just drove with tears rolling down my face. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Like something that had been sitting on my chest for 31 years finally cracked open. But here's the thing about families like mine. When someone finally stands up for you, they don't accept it. They panic. They scheme. They play victim. I woke up the next morning to 14 missed calls. My mom wrote, "Your grandfather is confused. He's old. We need to talk as a family." Meredith sent, "You need to tell Grandpa you don't want his money. This isn't fair." And my dad, who never calls me, sent one text that just said, "Call me." I didn't call any of them. Not because I was being petty. Okay, maybe a little petty. But mostly because I didn't have the energy to be gaslit at 7 in the morning. Do you blame me? Instead I called Grandpa Earl. He picked up on the first ring and said, "You okay, Jojo?" That's his nickname for me since I was 3. I told him he didn't have to do what he did. He said, "Jolene, I should have done it 10 years ago. I watched them starve you while feeding Meredith off my table. But insulting Bria? That baby? That was the last straw." He told me he'd already called his attorney, Douglas Pruitt, that morning. He was restructuring everything. The trust he'd set up years ago, designed to pass through my parents, was being dissolved and rebuilt. Everything going directly to me and Bria. The house in Kettering, the savings, 2 rental properties in Springfield. All of it. Now let me be honest with you. I know some people might think this is about money. But I'd been broke my whole adult life and survived. I worked 2 jobs and kept my daughter fed and loved. What Grandpa Earl was doing wasn't about money. It was recognition. It was someone finally saying, "I see what they did. And I'm going to make it right." Then he did something nobody saw coming. He asked for the house back. See, my parents' 4-bedroom colonial in Centerville? Grandpa Earl gave them the entire down payment. He'd been helping with the mortgage for years. The house was technically in a family trust he controlled. My parents just lived in it, remodeling the kitchen, putting in a pool, hosting dinner parties, all in a house that was never theirs. My mom called me screaming. He's going to take our house, Jolene. Tell him to stop. He listens to you. He listens to me because I never gave him a reason not to, I said. And I surprised myself with that one. I'm the type who thinks of the perfect response at 2 in the morning staring at the ceiling. But that one just came out. Then she said, you were always jealous of Meredith. Jealous of Meredith. The woman with a nanny and zero ability to make her own kids a sandwich. Green with envy. I hung up. Now Meredith got creative. She showed up at Grandpa Earl's house unannounced with Aiden and Chloe, cute little props. She sat in his living room crying, saying he was destroying the family, that I was manipulating him. About me. The woman who has never asked anyone for anything. Grandpa Earl let her finish. Then he said, Meredith, when's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for something. Just to talk. She didn't answer. Because the answer was never. Jolene calls me every Sunday. Bria draws pictures from my refrigerator. You bring your kids here when you need something. There's a difference. Then Meredith went scorched earth. She started calling extended family, telling everyone I'd turned Grandpa against the family. She called Aunt Phyllis in Columbus saying I was stealing from a senile old man. She posted vague things on Facebook about family betrayal. Some people believed her. Some stopped calling me. I became the villain in a story I didn't write. That hurt. I sat in my apartment after Bria went to bed wondering if I should just tell Grandpa Earl to undo everything. Almost did. Then one Thursday night I was helping Bria brush her teeth, and she looked up at me with toothpaste on her chin and said, Mama, am I going to be a babysitter? My heart stopped. Aunt Meredith said I'm going to be a babysitter. Is that my job? She'd heard it. At the picnic. It had been sitting in her brain for 2 weeks, and she thought her future had been decided by her aunt's words. I knelt down and said, Bria, you can be anything you want. A doctor, a teacher, an astronaut. Anything. She smiled. Can I be a dinosaur? If anyone can figure it out, it's you. After I put her to bed, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried until I was sick. Because my sister's cruelty had planted something in my daughter's mind. And I swore right there that I would never let anyone make Bria feel small again. Next morning I called Grandpa Earl. Don't change anything. Keep the plan. That's my girl. That Saturday he sat me down at his kitchen table with coffee and a manila folder. Inside wasn't inheritance paperwork. It was business paperwork. Jojo, you've been talking about opening a daycare since you were 23. I want to fund it. He'd already found a commercial space in Fairborn. He talked to Douglas Pruitt about an LLC. He had numbers, a plan. All he needed was me. I stared at that folder without speaking. Because this was my dream. The thing I'd whispered to myself during late-night cleaning shifts. The thing I'd researched on my phone during grocery store breaks. The thing I'd never told anyone except Grandpa Earl, because he was the only person who wouldn't laugh. Grandpa, I don't know if I can do this. You raised Bria alone, working 2 jobs with no help. You can do anything. I signed that afternoon. Over the next weeks we built something real. We toured the space. Bright, open, big windows, fenced yard out back. I filed permits, ordered supplies, stayed up until midnight reading about early childhood education. And for the first time in years I wasn't staying up from worry. I was staying up from excitement. Bria drew pictures of Mama's school with rainbow walls and a slide in the middle. I taped every one above my desk. Then word reached Meredith that Grandpa was funding a business. She called me, voice cold as ice. You think you're going to run a daycare? You, Jolene? You couldn't even keep a man around. Who's going to trust you with their kids? I should have hung up. Instead I said, your nanny raises your kids and you don't know what grade Aiden is in. Worry about your own household. She hung up. Good. But the lowest blow came next. Both my parents showed up at my apartment. My quiet, checked-out dad sat on my couch and said, Jolene, we think you should give the money back. We're considering talking to a lawyer about your grandfather's mental competency. They were going to try to declare Grandpa Earl incompetent. My perfectly sharp grandfather, who does the crossword in pen every morning and can recite batting averages of every 1975 Reds player, they wanted to say he was losing his mind. Because he helped me instead of them. I looked at my father and said, get out of my apartment. He looked shocked. I'd never pushed back like that. Not that directly. Jolene, Mom started. Out. Both of you. I called Grandpa Earl immediately. He was quiet for a long time, then said, let them try. Douglas is already 2 steps ahead. He wasn't bluffing. Douglas had anticipated this. He'd had Grandpa Earl evaluated by an independent physician the week after the picnic. Clean bill of mental health. Everything documented. The trust was ironclad. Grandpa told me, Jojo, they're not scared of losing money. They're scared of losing control over you. That's what this has always been about. And he was right. My whole life my family kept me small. Gave everything to Meredith, left me crumbs so I'd always be dependent. Now that someone lifted me up they were terrified. A Jolene who doesn't need them is a Jolene they can't control. That realization changed me. I stopped crying. Stopped second-guessing. Stopped wondering if I should smooth things over. I had spent my whole life trying to earn love from people who decided I wasn't worth it before I was even born. So I threw myself into the daycare. Painted the walls sage green with white trim. Built cubbies with Grandpa Earl while Bria handed us screws and said we were doing it wrong. Hired my first employee, a woman named Danielle with 15 years of experience. Named it Bright Roots Learning Center. But the competency threat wasn't their last move. What they tried next. I never could have predicted it. And what Grandpa Earl did in response still gives me goosebumps. So remember how I said my family doesn't go down quietly? I underestimated how far they'd go. About 3 weeks after I signed the lease for Bright Roots I got a knock on my door. Sunday afternoon Bria was napping and I was comparing paint samples for the daycare bathroom. I opened the door and there was Meredith. But not the cold, sharp Meredith from the phone calls. Red eyes. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Can I come in? Every instinct screamed no. But something in her face looked actually broken. Not fake broken. And despite everything, the insults about Bria, the smear campaign, I'm still me. I'm still the idiot who leaves the door open. She sat on my couch silent for a full minute. Then she said, Todd left. What? He's been having an affair. A woman named Harper from his office. He told me Wednesday. Already moved half his stuff out. Part of me thought karma works fast. But the bigger part, the part that remembered Meredith braiding my hair before school in 3rd grade, just felt sad. Meredith, I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it. Then she said, I need you to talk to Grandpa. I need money, Jolene. Todd's going to fight me for everything. She wasn't coming to me as a sister. She was coming to me as a bank. I'm not asking Grandpa for money on your behalf. Not after everything. She cried harder. I have nothing without Todd. The house is in his name. The cars are his. I haven't worked in 7 years. I don't even have a resume. And that was true. She'd built her whole life on Todd's income and Grandpa's generosity, and with both disappearing she had nothing. I wanted to say, well, you made your bed, the exact words my mother used when I was pregnant and alone, but I couldn't. Because I'm not my mother. I refused to be. But I wasn't going to be her lifeline without honesty first. Before I think about helping, answer one question truthfully. Did you mean what you said about Bria? She looked at the floor. Look at me. She looked up. I was jealous of you, Jolene. I almost laughed. Jealous of me? You have Bria. You have Grandpa. People love you because of who you are. Todd married me because I looked good next to him. Mom and Dad supported me because I made them look successful. Nobody chose me just because I'm me. When I saw you at that picnic happy with nothing, I hated you for it. So I said something awful. And I'm sorry. I did not expect that. Not from Meredith. I sat there trying to figure out if this was real or another performance, and something in her eyes told me it was real. Ugly and honest and real. I didn't forgive her that day. You don't insult a 5-year-old and get forgiveness over one couch conversation. But I heard her. That was enough for now. That night I called Grandpa Earl and told him everything. He went quiet. He does his best thinking in silence. Then said, Jojo, what do you want to do? I don't know. Yes, you do. He was right. I said, I don't want her to go through what I went through. Alone with kids and nothing. Then we'll figure something out. On your terms. Not hers. This is why I love that man. He didn't call me foolish. He just met me where I was. So here's what happened. Grandpa Earl didn't give Meredith money directly. Instead he had Douglas Pruitt recommend a solid family attorney, Kathleen Voss, who worked on a contingency arrangement so Meredith didn't need cash up front. Then he told my parents he'd consider helping Meredith, but only if certain things changed. First, my parents had to apologize to me. A real apology. Not a, sorry you feel that way. Second, Meredith had to apologize to Bria. In person. Looking her in the eye. Third, the big one. My parents had to sign paperwork acknowledging the Centerville house belonged to Grandpa Earl's trust. They could keep living there, but they'd pay fair rent, and the property would transfer to Bria's education fund when he passed. Grandpa laid this out to my dad over the phone. From what I heard, Frank didn't speak for 5 minutes. Then he said, okay. Just, okay. Because he finally understood the man holding everything together had reached his limit. My mother called 2 days later. I could tell she'd been coached by my dad, but the words still stumbled out. Jolene, I haven't been fair to you. I gave Meredith everything and left you behind. I'm sorry. Perfect? Well, enough? I don't know. But her voice cracked and I think she meant at least part of it. Thank you, Mom. Then the part one dreaded most. Meredith came over Saturday to apologize to Bria. I almost cancelled 3 times. She sat on my living room floor, looked at Bria and said, I said something mean at the picnic. I said you couldn't be something great. And that was wrong. You can be anything. You're smart and creative and I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Bria looked at her for a second then said, It's okay, Aunt Meredith. Want to see my drawings? Kids, man. They're just better than us. Meredith looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I gave her a small nod. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a start. Over the next 2 months things shifted. Slowly. Awkwardly. Like a family learning to walk after a bad injury. My mom showed up one weekend and helped me hang curtains at Bright Roots. Didn't say much but she was there. My dad came to Bria's preschool dance recital. Sat in the back and clapped like she'd won an Olympic medal. In the parking lot after he said, She's special, Jolene. You're doing a great job. 7 words. From Frank, that's basically a novel. Meredith's divorce got ugly. Todd fought everything. But Kathleen Voss was a bulldog and got her a fair settlement. Meredith moved to a smaller place in Beaver Creek and got a part-time job at a dental office doing front desk. Not glamorous, but she showed up every day. I respected that. She even asked shyly if Aiden and Chloe could come to Bright Roots after school sometimes. I said yes. Those kids are my niece and nephew. None of this was their fault. Grandpa Earl came to the grand opening of Bright Roots Learning Center on a Saturday in October. I'd hung a banner, put out coffee and donuts. 12 families had enrolled. Danielle was there in a bright yellow Bright Roots polo. Bria ran around telling every kid who walked in, My mama built this. Grandpa Earl stood in the doorway, looked at the sage green walls, the cubbies, the reading nook and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he looked at me and said, Your grandmother would have been so proud of you, Jojo. I lost it. Ugly, crying in front of everyone. Very professional for a grand opening. But I didn't care. Here's what I've learned through all this. Family isn't the people who are supposed to love you. It's the people who actually do. I spent 31 years trying to earn my place in a family that decided I didn't have one. It took a 78-year-old man standing up at a picnic to change everything. We're not perfect now. Meredith and I have hard days. My mom still says things that make me clench my jaw. My dad is still learning to show up. But they're trying. And I believe in that. I believe people can change even when they've given you every reason to think they won't. I believe it the same way I believe in God. Not because I have proof but because giving up on people just isn't how I'm built. Bria told me the other day she wants to build a school when she grows up. Like you, Mama. But bigger. With a slide. So yeah. She's not going to be anyone's babysitter. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, I'd love a like. And if there's something you would have done differently or didn't agree with, please drop it in the comments. I read every single one and your opinion really matters to me. Just, thank you for being here. It means more than you know.